Walk with me while I talk about my son's diagnosis and what I wish I knew back then. Walking has been amazing for my mental health for a long time now, but for the longest time I haven't been doing it, and I really need to get back into walking. So I feel like this is a good time for me to collect my thoughts and think back to when he was diagnosed about 5 years ago. So the early signs before diagnosis. Up until about the age of 10 months, Elijah was progressing pretty normally with all of the regular milestones, smiling, engaging with people. There wasn't really any red flags until around the 10-month mark. He was sort of babbling and he did have a few very clear words, and then he started walking, and then it stopped. All language stopped. And it was really easy to shrug this off as a part of, learning to walk. You learn to walk and you focus on walking, so maybe, we're not going to talk for a bit. So it wasn't immediate that we're like, oh, okay, we need to look into this. We kind of shrugged it off. And also, people around me were very dismissive. They were saying, oh, boys just can be speech delayed more often than girls, and he'll talk when he's ready, and that kind of thing. And obviously, you don't want there to be anything wrong, so it's really easy to be like, okay, maybe you're right, he's only 10 months old. So, you know, time marched on and didn't really look into it any further. But then there was more signs, because now I'm sort of looking at him a little bit closer now that his speech has gone, and he's babbling, but it's not as clear as it was. It went from very clear mum and dad to just babble. It felt like overnight. And so I'm looking closer at him and at his development, and I'm noticing that when I'm calling his name, he's not answering his name, and this is in the same room. So he's not turning to look at me when I'm saying his name. And that was alarming to me. And we went and got his hearing tested, and it became apparent that it wasn't a hearing problem, because I remember him pointing up at the helicopters. Whenever there'd be a helicopter, he'd point outside. So clearly it wasn't a hearing thing, but it was almost like he was in his own world. And I remember being really fixated on the pointing thing. He never pointed at things until much, much older. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, he's not pointing, and that's a marker. But I still, in my head, I think maybe it was in a bit of denial about it being autism. I think I had talked myself into being some other developmental delay. I don't know why, but I just thought, well, there's no other signs. He's not lining things up or doing, the things that you always hear about. However, I didn't really have any experience with autism until my child. So, and every child is so different. You can't put them all in the same box. So when we worked out that his hearing was okay, and the speech was still delayed, then there was more signs. So when the speech did start to come back, it was very repetitive, very scripted sounding. It was just sort of him repeating back to us what we were saying, which is called echolalia. At the time, I didn't know that. And he was sort of just repeating the same phrases again and again to himself. It wasn't even like he was trying to engage in conversation. So I ended up taking him to see a public speech therapist, who said he was too young to diagnose, so that was delayed further. Then a regular pediatrician who just sort of took all his vitals and didn't really say much. And then I was still growing more and more concerned, because he was getting older, and the delays were becoming more and more apparent. Transitions were really difficult. He was so fixated on going to the park, but would really struggle when having to leave, and you would have to pick him up kicking and screaming just to leave the park. And it became so bad that I remember I just didn't want to take him anymore. And it wasn't until one day when he had a really, really big meltdown episode that was far beyond what anyone would call a regular tantrum. I remember we left the park and I took him to my husband's work, and we went and had something to eat. And I don't know if it was tiredness. I really don't know what the trigger was. Obviously, there must have been multiple triggers because it was the biggest meltdown he's ever had. And it was in this very public place, of course. And I just remember cycling through so much guilt, anger, desperation, sadness, despair. I just, nothing I could do was calming him down, and I just couldn't work out why. What was going on with this little boy? Like, why couldn't I calm him? And by the end of it, we were just both on the floor in tears and just exhausted for days afterwards. And I remember I went home and I Googled autism meltdown. And I don't know why the words autism meltdown came to my head, because they hadn't been in my head prior to that moment. Because I was like, that can't be like a regular tantrum. Like, this is my first child. I don't really have much experience with tantrums and what normal levels are, but he was just out of control and he couldn't be controlled. It was like he had gone. And then it started to fit with that. And I finally got him to see a developmental pediatrician who specializes in that kind of diagnosis, because I needed answers. Either way, I just needed to know. And she sat me down and just very casually said, obviously after assessing him, that he had ASD, autism spectrum disorder. And honestly, after that, everything kind of got blurry. She was telling me all the things that he probably won't be able to do and treatments available. And I was on my own, and it was just so overwhelming. I just couldn't fathom, what I'd just been told, and, like that was it. And I remember, he was in the office with me, and there was a park across the road, but it was within eyeshot. It was a huge, amazing, like kid heaven park, and it was within eyeshot of the office, but you couldn't physically get to it by walking. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like he's already seen the park through the window. He's going to want to go to the park, but he's not going to be able to understand that we need to get in the car in order to get to the park. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this? This is not going to go well. And that foreboding kind of, oh God, like this is not going to end well. And then also trying to process the diagnosis. And yeah, we obviously had to get him into the car safely, and he didn't want to, because he didn't understand that we couldn't physically walk over to the park. There was like a water barrier, I don't know, like a sewage pipe drain tunnel, I don't know what you call it, but there was no bridge to get over it. It just wasn't accessible by walking, even though it wasn't that far away. And I was like, I just have to get him in the car, because he is a runner and he is liable to run off. And he had run into traffic at times as well. So I was thinking, I just need to get him safely to this park and then just process what I've just heard. So I got him in the car. We got to the park. It wasn't easy, but we got him there, and I rang my husband, and I'm crying and I'm watching him. And I just remember thinking, like, this child's life has changed forever, and our lives have changed forever, and I don't know where to go or who to turn to, and I just feel so very, very alone right now. And I felt like he was the only child in the world who has ever had that diagnosis. That's how it felt. And I just want to explain something to you as someone who's 5 years into this journey. And if you're at that point right now where you've just been given this diagnosis, I just want to say that you need time to process, and it's okay to need time to process. You don't have to have all the answers right away. There is a lot to go through. You need time to feel whatever you're feeling, whether it's relief, whether it's grief, because I did feel a sense of grief, because I had a vision in my head of what the future would be, which is so ridiculous, really, because no one knows what our children's futures are, regardless of a diagnosis. But there was a sense of grief of that loss. There was a sense of relief that I wasn't a terrible parent and he did need extra support. It wasn't that I was completely failing him. And just that I need that time to process, and you will too, and that's normal. And you might feel like, oh my god, we have to get going right away and work out the support, but you just need time to process it and feel the feelings. And number two, diagnosis is a good thing because it unlocks support, even though it can be a shock and you might be in denial for a little bit, and probably family and friends will be in denial as well. That happened with me. A lot of people just didn't believe that he was autistic, but as he got older it became very, very apparent. And it's so hard because the last thing you want when you're dealing with this is for people to just sort of shrug it off and say, oh well, he's fine, he doesn't need help. You need people to be like, okay, let's do this together. And no one hands you like an autism or ADHD or neurodivergent concierge, whatever the diagnosis is. There is no concierge that sits down with you and says, hey, this is what the next steps are. You kind of just asked, what supports do you think they need? What are your goals? All of these questions that you just like, and all of these acronyms and appointments, and it's just a lot. But the diagnosis is the first step, and it will unlock that support. And there are a lot of resources out there. And that brings me to my third point, that you're not alone, and there are so many resources out there. There's so much research that's been done. There are people out there that understand what you're going through, and they understand how to help your child. But you don't have to know everything all at once. You are going to learn as you go, and that's okay. You don't need to be an expert in your child from day one. I'm still not an expert in my child. I don't think I ever will be, nor do I want to be, because if you claim to be an expert in something, you stop asking questions. And we need to keep an open mind about supports and what they need, because it will change over their life. And you will be told a lot of things that your child can't do, and it's not always accurate as well. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. They don't know everything, and they don't know your child and what your child is and isn't capable of. So try not to get ahead of yourself. Just focus on processing, starting to get supports. Do it slowly, bit by bit, and just know that there are people out there like myself and like so many others. You are not on your own on this journey. And as you progress throughout the journey, you'll start to see that, and you'll start to notice more families with similar diagnoses, and it just opens up a whole new way of seeing the world. It will change you as a person, but I think ultimately for the better, because it broadens your outlook on the world, and it certainly did for me. I try not to judge people on face value anymore, because you just do not know what struggles people have. And autism and ADHD are relatively invisible disabilities, in the sense that you can look at someone and you can't tell. You cannot tell that someone has autism simply by looking at them. And it really makes you look at the world differently, understanding that there are people that have very, very real struggles that aren't immediately obvious. So that's something that's really changed my outlook. And yeah, there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to go over, but I really just wanted you to understand that even though you feel really alone right now, you're not alone. And I hope that you can feel that, because I'm saying it, and I'm also saying it to the past me. I'm saying it to whoever's listening, but I'm also saying it to that girl that heard about the diagnosis all those years ago and thought, oh my God, what do I do now? And it's been a journey. It has had its ups and downs, and there's been challenges, there's been remarkable days, there's been everything in between. I've questioned everything. I've questioned myself, I've questioned society, I've questioned life, but it's we've grown together, and I feel like I'm more in tune with my son than I ever have been, and I wish the same for you too, whatever your circumstance is. And I'm going to try and post some more and just, I don't know, tell you more about our journey and what's helped for us. And yeah, I hope that this has brought you some comfort and found the people who need to hear it most.